So this is more just an opportunity for me to spread the word about what's emotionally possible so that people can make informed decisions about how they want to experience their life. So, I suppose, first of all, I'd just dive into what we specifically mean by an emotion. If I'm an emotional empowerment coach, let's get really specific. Because often when we're talking about emotions, we're actually discussing ideas. So, you might hear somebody say something like, oh, I just feel like it's never ending, or I can't believe this has just happened, or it just feels so much. And all of those ideas are to be respected and to be validated because they're important and they're relevant. But you'll notice they're actually discussing ideas rather than emotions. So now we're getting really specific. What do we mean by an emotion? Well, what we mean is a physical sensation that we experience in our body produced by our brain. So actually the second part of the word emotion, motion, refers to the physiological energy we feel in our body when we're experiencing an emotion. And we could see this quite easily, for example, when we're feeling frustrated and you might notice muscle tension, for example. So we're thinking about physical sensations, and this can be a really beautiful example of how the science can sometimes make what feels like an incredibly noisy and intimidating emotional experience to reduce it down to something that feels simpler, that gives us more clarity, that gives us more empowerment, because our brain is a supercomputer, and that is an amazing gift. But when it's left to its own devices, it's amazing at overcomplicating our experience, again, with no judgment. But sometimes having this clarity and detachment can be really helpful. So let me give you a few examples. For example, perhaps you can recognize the sensations of worry or anxiety if I mention mild nausea, slightly heightened heart rate or breathing, maybe muscular tension in the neck and shoulders, sweat. In fact, before I was an emotional empowerment coach, I worked with inner city school children in Bristol. And they were amazing individuals and taught me so much about who I want to be and what matters in life. But another way of saying that was it was like going up against front of a firing squad every single day. And I remember going around Tesco really late at night, and I don't know if you know this, but there's the deodorant for the normal people, and then there's the deodorant for people experiencing a lot of sweat. And that was me. I was navigating a lot of anxiety at that point, lots of sweat going on. And those sensations to do with emotions were definitely something that I could pick up on. Now that we know that we're focusing on our emotions as physical sensations, though, let's talk a little bit about what emotional empowerment actually means, because it's a very unknown phrase. It's not used very often. So, individuals who have taught their brain empowering skills have got a certain skill set. One, they can support themselves when their brain has already produced a challenging emotion to allow it to minimize, process, and pass. So once we've taught the brain those skills, it's possible to reduce the intensity that we feel every day and minimize that, allow it to process and pass. So one of the reasons, for example, that I haven't had a client start with me and still experience overwhelm by the time we're 6 sessions in is because a lot of that heightened spectrum has a lot to do with unprocessed emotion. And we're all just trying to get through the day as best we possibly can. As far as I'm concerned, emotional empowerment skills were that kind of secret missing module left off of all of our kind of business training, professional training, personal training. So this doesn't show any inadequacy in us at all. It's just that these skills can provide such regulation and comfort. Emotional empowerment also means that an individual has taught their brain to reduce and remove persistent unhelpful emotions, the ones that keep poking us. And also, they've taught their brain to actually construct the emotions that form their emotional goals. So, for example, I remember when I was mastering this work myself, and I went on a little walk down my village road, and it was actually kind of quite a bleak, cloudy, rainy day, and I was walking along, and I suddenly felt warm, and I would use the word bubbly, a bit like butterflies, and I wondered what was going on, and it was the feeling of worth. And this still makes me quite emotional to talk about because I had no idea that that feeling was available to me. I would have laughed someone out of the room 5 years ago if they'd said that I could teach my brain to feel worth. And yet there it was, bubbling up as a subconscious emotion that was then part of my life. So really amazing skills that can change your life forever and something we all deserve. So, empowering emotions, the sorts of emotions that would drive our professional business success. Here's just a little overview. It's a tool that I use when I support my clients to recognize their emotional goals. And These emotions are ones that are really energizing. So we're talking about physiological sensations. These emotions are really energizing. They're beautiful for supporting our health. And critically, they are amazing for driving our potential. So we actually had that beautiful example, didn't we, earlier? I think it was Yvonne, and forgive me if I've talked about the wrong person, but I think Yvonne, you were talking about taking that opportunity to do your program and to have your theatre experience. And I just thought that was such a beautiful example of emotions empowering us and supporting us to take opportunity. So when we're looking at this, we're not looking to identify problems or weaknesses in ourselves at all. Simply just to identify exciting opportunity because these emotions really do build like cumulative interest. When our brain is producing them, it's amazing where these can take you as little steps that build to have amazing impact. Maybe if I was just going to choose one example, having never experienced confidence, I have now found that because my brain reassures me with any challenging emotion that can come my way, the worst thing that I'm going to feel is a feeling. So actually, when someone says, "Would you like to do this, please?" For example, I was very privileged that Sarah said, "Would you like to talk?" My brain was able to say, "Yes, please," because actually the worst thing that will come my way is a feeling. So actually, if I can focus on the value I can provide and know I can emotionally support myself, then it's a yes from me. And it's amazing. That's taken me to a global summit in Florida where I presented at the World Kindness Summit and all sorts of amazing things that I would just love for everyone. And potential looks different to everyone, doesn't it? It's just about opportunity, really, and what's right for us. But when our brain is left to its own devices, when we're doing business alone, it's amazing to have groups like this to support us, of course it is. But our brain is naturally set up to often find it very effortless to produce challenging emotions. So this is a challenging feelings wheel, and this is quite often what the does under pressure. So when we are identifying any of the emotions here that are part of our experience, we're not here to identify something lacking in us. This doesn't show any lack of worth or capability in you whatsoever. They are just physiological sensations. So if you were experiencing a headache, we wouldn't think that meant anything less about you. It's a physical sensation, right? If we experience overwhelm, that could be a really natural, normal experience that we can have when we're under pressure. So we want to kind of see this with the same curious detachment. We want to just be seeing what our experience is with clarity, because only with that conscious clarity can we have impact. There is absolutely no physiological sensation or emotion you can experience that diminishes your value and worth as a person or as a business professional. They are simply sensations that we feel in our body that can be unwelcome and unpleasant, but certainly not indicative of any lack of worth at all. In fact, if you hear one thing from me today, please remember that you are entirely wonderful and valuable and worthy as an individual, regardless of the emotions you're experiencing. But clearly, there's some wonderful advantage if we can use emotions to our benefit. And I would just love to pop you through three big business gains that I would offer to you are the main ones that would be most useful when we're driving our business success. Sarah, would you mind just giving me a heads up on the minutes wise as well? If I ever get close to running over, perhaps you could just politely let me know if I've got a couple of minutes to go. That would be
Yes,
amazing.
I will. I will. I
Thank you,
think you've got
Natalie.
about
Thank
5 minutes left. So yeah, all good.
Beautiful. Okay, great. So let's dive into these business gains. So when we've got that skill set within our armory of being able to support ourselves to best advantage emotionally, to teach our brain to rebuild itself, to deliver the emotions that will best support us, why does that provide us with business success? Why is that a secret skill that's available to us? I'd say I could talk about it all day, but there are top three reasons why it can be particularly fantastic for business success. One is that when we are experiencing supportive, empowering emotions, that is absolutely transformative for revealing our potential. And I suppose if I was talking about potential at its absolute core, I would talk about the value that we offer as business professionals, as being the value that we can offer. And what I would suggest is that all of our value comes from our brain. Our brain is that powerhouse behind the value that we can offer in business. And the reason that emotions become critical at this point is because those challenging emotions that can often get in the way, they act as like a gate the part of the brain that we want to access for all our juicy creativity, executive functioning, creative thinking, curiosity, like all the gold stuff that we want to utilize and harness as much as possible for business success. When we are escalated and we have intense emotions as part of our experience, that's natural and normal and not indicative of any weakness in us as a person. It just means our brain won't be on its A game. Conversely, when you are feeling secure and reassured and empowered, that part of your brain, especially the prefrontal cortex, which does all the magic for us in terms of our highest levels of thinking, it's like having a prop to open the gates to that part of our brain. So it's really so much more than feeling good. Emotional empowerment is actually about giving yourself full mental capacity, essentially, for what you're capable of as an individual. And we can all see what we're capable of in this room today, which is really exciting. Second point, as a big business gain, I would offer that empowering yourself emotionally is transformative for productivity. Actually, one of the members mentioned procrastination earlier, and I have no doubt their coaching is absolutely fantastic for that. When you are experiencing empowering emotions, they are fantastic for productivity. So I'll just give you two examples. One that used to cripple me every single day was perfectionism. So perfectionism was where my brain would try and use perfection as a way to measure my own worth or value at doing something. Not only was it absolutely exhausting because perfection doesn't even exist, it was also the fact that I would spend a lot of time trying to execute something. And do you know what? Underneath it all, it was all emotional protectionism. I was just trying to protect myself from potential criticism that might come my way. And it was fairly effective. Like we're all just trying to get through life as best we can, right? And we've learned strategies that are emotionally helpful. So it was okay that I was doing that. It was also understandable, but it really didn't help my productivity. And another one, procrastination, for example, that's often when our brain goes into the future and it identifies a circumstance coming our way that it associates with emotional challenge. So, one of our strategies, which is quite ingenious, is to kind of try and disengage with that reality as long as possible so that we don't have to navigate that challenging emotion and instead we can kind of leave it on the periphery. However, what actually happens then is it kind of comes closer and closer and closer, and then we have to try and execute it really quickly, which means that it's very unlikely to be our best work. So that's just a couple of ways of increasing productivity. And I suppose finally, I'd also offer that when you're emotionally empowered, it's wonderful for fueling your mental and physical energy. And we can all relate to how tiring it can be running your own business and being that person that's the fuel in the tank every single day. And the reason that emotions can be so energizing is for a plethora of reasons. But, let's take one example. We've all tried to rest and relax when our brain has other ideas entirely, when we've got a very busy brain and we're trying to work through all of its processing all of the time, especially when we're not feeling particularly reassured and calm and peaceful and comfortable. And so quite often our restorative rest, which is so important for brain recovery, like for example, when we're sleeping, our brain actually cleans itself, it lays down and solidifies its memories. Like sleep is so much more than just not feeling sleepy. It's actually really important for optimal brain performance. But often our emotions can have other ideas. I used to wake up having had awful dreams, for example, because my brain just wasn't supporting me emotionally. So yeah, we could all do with our mental energy topped up, but also physical energy, perhaps stating the obvious. But because I've just talked about emotions as being physical sensations in the body, oh my goodness, they can be so exhausting. Like being on the other side of worry now, and sometimes that still bubbles up. Of course, I'm still human, but being the other side of those intense, challenging emotions, which are natural, normal, but really physiologically draining, is something I would just love everybody to know is possible.
Thank
So
you.
oh, sorry, Sarah,
Oh, carry on. Yeah, if you, yeah. About,
are we
yeah.
at 1 minute or am
Can you
I?
wrap up? Can you wrap up in 1 minute? Okay.
Yeah, beautifully,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay.
So I suppose as a final word of encouragement, I would just say All you need to be able to access emotional empowerment is you. You already have everything you need. You have a beautiful brain that's ready to learn, to develop, and support you in the best way possible. So, thank you so much for your time today. If any of you would like to join my free email community, you would be very welcome. I send out emails that are from a place of complete support that touch on a topic each week and then give you a practical application for that. So a little practical step. So if you're interested in that, you're very welcome to come over and join us. But Sarah did mention that perhaps a couple of questions might be quite helpful. So I've just got a couple of curious questions that you might want to take away to your groups, perhaps. So based on what we've discussed, you might like to explore and consider what your emotional goals might be that would drive your business success personally as an individual. Or you might like to think about how do you see emotions fueling your capacity and potential? What can that look like? And it's really exciting how when we give our brain a conscious opportunity to picture something, just as Sarah and others have mentioned today, that really can give us the conscious awareness to allow us to start taking steps that have impact. So thank you so much for your time and attention. I'm very grateful to have had this opportunity. I really am. You were wonderful and it's been great to be here. Thanks, Sarah.
Wow. Absolutely loved that. Thank you so much. I love the all you need is you. I mean, how amazing is that? We are our best friends and our worst enemies all at the same time, aren't we? Do you want to stop the share there,
Of course,
Sally?
Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Sorry.
No, that's
Yeah.
okay. Thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic, beautifully delivered. I love your upbeat style, and it really does. Yeah, I'm sure you'll all agree. It was